So the Navy is now, they have influencers. A digital ambassador is what they call it. It's an active duty drag queen. It's a part of a recent drive to, quote, attract the most talented and diverse workforce, end quote, and to combat the plunging recruitment. I mean, this is where our military has sunk. And it is being infiltrated with this agenda. But we're seeing it all across this administration. It has infiltrated our foreign policy as well. I mean, we're seeing now the State Department withholding foreign aid, which I'm not really crazy about foreign aid to begin with, but they're conditioning it upon adopting this radical sexual policy of this administration. Joining me now to discuss this and more is former Congresswoman Michele Bachmann. She served in Congress for 8 years. She was on the House Intel Committee, and she is now Dean of the Robertson School of Government at Regent University. And she joins us now in studio. Dean Bachmann, welcome to Washington Watch.
Tony, thank you.
All right, so, it's laughable. It's probably, I would say it's the punchlines of late night TV, but they probably are afraid to talk about it. Drag queens in the Navy.
Well, that's emblematic of the number one priority now of the Biden administration, drag queens. You know, they're putting them in preschools and in schools, but now it's in the military. And this is at a time when the military is really at its worst in terms of preparedness. They've blown every goal that they had for recruiting. And so what this means is that they'll blow it even more,
right,
because people don't want to join the military when this is the kind of garbage that they know that they're going to walk into. I think this is by design. It's by intention. It's intentional. I think this is an administration that's trying to torpedo the military and military preparedness, and this is just part of that agenda.
You were on the House Select Committee on Intelligence. You have an understanding of the threats toward this country. I mean, just this week, Iran has seized 2 tankers in the Strait of Hormuz.
That's right.
We've got Putin now threatening to use nuclear weapons. We have a world that is just topsy-turvy.
Well, that's why this makes perfect sense from the Biden administration perspective to put in a drag queen influencer, because they're trying to send the signal of U.S. weakness militarily and economically. So this emboldens every enemy that we have.
So let me ask you about what's the yes, okay,
Yeah.
so they want to do, I agree there has to be some intentionality.
Well, it's intentional.
Here.
You can't get it wrong.
But what's their end game? Is
Well,
it that, like, we won't bother you, we're weak, we're incapable of doing anything?
Well,
or is it to open the gates of the country?
I think it's obvious what the end game is here. They're seeking to have a platform for global governance where the United States is not the lead. If you look on almost every level, their goal is to weaken the United States economically and militarily and from a moral perspective on the planet.
Well, that's the foundation of it.
But
if you can,
global governance is where they're headed.
Okay,
that's their goal.
I want to talk about the foreign policy and how this agenda has moved into the State Department, where you've got countries like Uganda and other countries that still have a moral fabric that are resistant to this whole LGBTQ agenda, and so they're withholding foreign aid until they...
So they're not real inclusive, are they?
Right.
They're not terribly inclusive of people that have values that go against this LGBTQ agenda. So they're frauds. First and foremost, the State Department are frauds. They have a radical agenda that they're trying to promote. I saw it
with our tax dollars,
absolutely.
by the way.
I saw it traveling through South America, Central America.
Yeah.
National leaders said that we're being held hostage because we have to prove to the U.S. State Department that we ran a gay pride parade or we don't get our money.
I've heard it myself from
That's right.
ambassadors.
That's right. It's
right.
extortion.
I want to talk about this global governance, because another issue you've been talking about, we've actually talked about this. This is the World Health Organization. And this basically making them the pandemic police. That's the power that Tedros, the Secretary General there, is looking for.
He's looking for it. And remember, for the last 3 years, our country is operated under emergency powers. That's how President Biden operated. He was able to do lawless, unconstitutional actions because he operated under emergency powers. Now he is seeking to give emergency powers to the WHO. So they would transfer from being an advisory-only body to a regulatory body with authority, and they could tell us what we can do with healthcare.
Globally.
Well, this creates a platform for the first time in history for global governance
This gives
through the
them,
United Nations World Health Organization.
But this gives them more power than the United Nations itself actually has.
Yes, it would, because global governance would be run through the World Health
And
Organization.
they use health and scaring people with their fear-mongering.
Well, that's what they've done for 3 years in the United States.
And so they're just
we've had the
building on
beta
it.
test.
Yeah.
So now they want to have the global test for global governance sent to the World Health Organization.
Right, we've talked about this.
And
I
this
know-
isn't just some proposal.
No, it's
This
there.
is actually happening.
We've talked about there's two tracks here. There's the treaty or the accord that they're looking at, but there's also amendments that
Yes.
they're working to their governing documents.
To introduce in Geneva, Switzerland, the last week in May.
Right. And members of Congress are concerned about this and
Yes.
looking, and we've got their, and you and others have gotten their attention to defund the WHO.
The greatest thing would be if Speaker McCarthy would tie raising the debt ceiling to having President Biden get the United States out of the WHO, not give President Biden one more dime
it was in the mix
until we get it back.
It was in the mix, but did not make it to the final cut. It will be in the appropriations, but even
But
then,
it may be too late.
Well,
it's
agree.
possible because this is an urgent situation. The vote could happen in Geneva, Switzerland, the last week of May, and that's why it's important that this get done.
And it's not just enough to cut the funding. You have to get the United States out.
You have to. President Trump did.
Yeah.
He gave the notice to the WHO that the United States is out because he saw what a disaster they made in
And
the
Biden
pandemic.
put us right back
and
in.
he defunded them. But on the day Joe Biden was inaugurated, he put the United States back in the WHO that first day and restored funding.
Yeah. So my point is my understanding, as I've talked to members and others, that we can't just cut off the funding. We've got to get out.
We have to get out. That's the only way.
Right.
That's the only way we can do. But our goal is, if the United States isn't in, we're the big dog. That changes everything. But it's a timing issue because it is an urgency. And people need to know we're not throwing around terms like global governance lightly. This is a real thing that they're looking at doing. And once you give away sovereignty to an organization like the UN, absent a miracle, you don't get it back.
And we've seen how easily people are manipulated with the fear that was put out during the pandemic.
Yes, and then where do we go to appeal? We can't go to Congress. We can't elect a new president. You can't go to the Supreme Court. Once that power is transferred, the day is done.
And this is a first step.
Yes, it is.
I mean, they will not stop here.
No, that's right.